What's up, everyone? Welcome to Gatekeeper Media's In the Mix with Parked Podcast. This is episode 2. We are working on production quality to make this thing better and better and better. Thank you for being here at the beginning. My name is Mitch Phillips, and next to me is not Hayden Ricard. This is my good friend, Zach Harrison. How are you doing, brother?
I'm doing super well, man. Thanks for giving me the call, giving me the opportunity to be on the podcast with you.
Yeah, it's an awesome time. Zach and I have been friends for a long time. Unfortunately, Hayden is sick, not able to do this. Podcasting is tough when you really can't speak. That's when it gets difficult. But where are we at the Disc Golf Pro Tour this week, man?
This week was Waco. This was an amazing course, Brazos Park East. We saw a lot of action, to say the least.
I think that finally we get to a course that has such good in between. We would come from Vegas where 99% of the holes are open, and we come here as the beast. But let's talk a little bit about Waco. Home of Dr. Pepper, I think, is what most people don't realize. You got Dr. Pepper Museum, you got Magnolia. I mean, there's so many different things that Waco has going for it, and this tournament is one I look forward to all the time coming back to. But something we don't look forward to coming to is incredibly weird weather, which you don't necessarily expect in a place like Waco, Texas?
No, I mean, I feel like Texas is flat enough to whip up a lot of wind,
right.
And the Brazos is not a river to be messed with. You know, that's a big river that carries a lot of wind. So we saw it. The players, pros, had to handle that both directions, not just, oh, we have a headwind on hole one.
Right.
It was round one, headwind, or north to south wind.
Yeah.
And then round two, pretty calm. Nice conditions. They were able to just play their game, but then round three, the wind switches. So 3 different ways to play the same course.
Truly.
Wind coming up, wind coming down, and then a nice, calm, natural day. So lots of things to think about and contend with out there.
Yeah, I think it cannot be understated how cold and how windy it was in round 1. 2019 Jonesboro was, I think, colder, but definitely not as windy. Like, not even close due to the river. I personally, I think weather and all that stuff is super fascinating. Natural disasters, that water is terrifying to me. And then when you add water and wind next to the river, it just becomes just insane. And we had winds up to 30, 35 mile per hour gusts, and it felt like it was in the high 20s.
Yeah, you saw Ricky out there looking like he's about to go down the ski slopes. I mean, people were really bundled up just to feel comfortable.
Welding gloves. I mean, it was just like whatever you got.
I mean, luckily, all the people who came over from Scandinavia were ready with their mittens and everything, but it was no joke out there. They really had to be prepared.
I think that was the difference maker. It was like, if you had gloves, you obviously were like, oh yeah, we figured this out. If you had mittens, you knew this was coming. You were prepared. That was the pro cold weather person out there.
Yeah, most definitely.
But moving into round 2, it was like, hey, you can throw on a polo and shorts and maybe a pair of pants. And it was the best conditions. Had some hot rounds come in, the scoring. But then, like you said, we come into round 3 and you have the wind flip. Holes 1 through 3 in round 1, tailwind, and then you had in 13 through 16 be literally unplayable. Yeah. Played as some of the hardest holes statistically, like ever. 20 to 30 mile per hour headwinds. What do you do? And then you have the round 3, you switch it, and it's like, hey, guess what? Now you have these tighter, smaller holes 1 through 3 that are headwind, and now 13 through 16 are more attackable and become some of the easiest holes in the course.
Right.
Can you think of another time that a course can do that the weather affects it that much to where, hey, it's a totally different play?
No, I think the only time that wind comes at you in such a different way is whenever you get like a swirling wind, and it's hard to predict which direction it's coming from. But this was a totally different monster. I mean, that wind was no joke. 20 miles an hour. I mean, it doesn't matter how stable your disc is. The wind is going to do something bad to the disc. So you really had to play. I mean, you saw a lot of guys trying to do some skip shots and trying to just match the wind so it just carried it back into the green space. But a lot of mistakes were made because of that wind. You thought you were going to make a nice, simple flip hyzer shot, and it carries it off into the Brazos, and bye-bye disc. Like, you're now out a disc. You will not get that back.
No, unless there's a guy in a kayak, going upstream trying to catch him. That'd have been pretty awesome. Can we get a kayak fleet for river courses? The Disc Golf Pro Tour branded.
Gosh, dude, they would need jet skis out there on a river. You'd be out there all day. Yeah, just Float up, float down.
Oh my gosh, have comm system. We're coming in. He's going hyzer. It's turning. That'd be, oh man. Well, we'll see if that happens next year. But yeah, I think this course it's called the Beast for a reason.
Yeah.
It reminds me of Worlds last year at Utah Open, but obviously being on one course. You have one course at Worlds that was completely open on a golf course, and then you have a course that is completely wooded. So you had this like, people are playing great one round, people are playing great another round, like it flip-flopped. Mm-hmm. Here, one course, 9 woods, 9 in the open. You saw players excel, maybe score 4 to 5, 6 down on the front 9, but then all that's erased on the back 9.
That's a really good point, because the front 9 is the most attackable part of the course, right? When the wind is a little bit lower, you're in the woods, you're able to kind of get a little bit of a shield through those trees. And
that's just from the wind, because those holes are not easy. I mean, you had some of these ridiculous, like very short par 4s that became some of the hardest holes in the course because you're a 10-foot fairway snaking through the woods.
Yeah, and then of course, the wind is going to push you left and right, up and down, and you have a ceiling to work with. And I mean, we saw a lot of players, like we were talking about how Ricky sometimes would get his nose angle up and hit the top of the ceiling.
Yeah, and Ricky being one of the best scramblers in the game.
Yeah.
And still having trouble. But some weird things. I think one of the craziest things to me was hole 1, 291 feet par 3.
Yeah, the couple of options there in the wind, there's only one option for me. Yeah. I would never have played the big spike hyzer over the tree onto the green, because you see, and you can only imagine when you expose the bottom of the disc to a right to left wind, it's only going to push your disc.
Yeah.
And
it's a straight spike to attack that.
Yeah, it literally is a spike. And you saw some of the players go ahead and say, I'm not even going to mess with the spike. I'm going to play right up the middle.
Right.
And I saw a lot of people successful with that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why anyone else would go in any other direction. But, some people come in with a game plan and they just try to stick to it.
Right.
But then you have to deal with the wind. So
yeah, when that changes, round to round, round 1 was tailwind. Mm-hmm. So you saw a lot more players go up the middle that kind of flip up with a putter with a mid-range. But then round 2, you're able to throw the spike, throw what a lot of people like to do. Then round 3, you have a super headwind. Mm. And then there's these changes that have happened in past years. We've seen this sponsorship wall be the out of bounds line, which it was this year. We've seen it no wall, just a marked line of chalk and paint. Then you have the wall just behind the out of bounds. What is your favorite variation? Maybe, and this is big picture, on hole 1 here, because yes, it is a hole where there's rollaways. Mm-hmm. It is, it can help, it can hurt. But talk about, the variation of how these out of bounds walls are being used on this hole, but then also across our sport, and pros and cons.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say if you want to put OB, it should be OB-able. You should be able to go OB, if that makes sense. So I think having the wall as OB makes sense for maybe some longer holes, but on a hole like this one, I, as a TD, would want that to be a difficult hole because it's less than 300 feet.
Right.
It's a pretty straightforward shot, barring 30 mile an hour wind. So what I would probably want is OB that you can roll to.
Yeah.
Right. And so I would say, give them a wall if you want to protect their discs. You see that at Hornet's Nest, for example, when you go over and you have to land on an island, they do protect your discs from just skipping into the water by putting a wall there. But if you hit the wall, you're OB.
Right.
So I kind of like that. If you want to make
you don't
it
lose
OB,
your disc, but you're still penalized.
You're still penalized. Exactly. So I like that. I think it's important to make these courses difficult because you see these scores that these guys are putting up, they're outrageous.
Yeah. And I mean, let's talk about this in the general too. So many sub 300 foot holes and top players in the world struggling. Yet when you think of it's 300 feet, they're going to throw probably a putter. They're going to throw maybe a mid range. And consistently, hole 1 being, one of the bigger ones that definitely saw the most difficulty. I mean, you had players in the league card getting bogeys, double bogeys on the men's and the women's side.
Right.
I mean, this hole was difficult, but I mean, so many of these, 216, hole 8, I believe, 213, 215 feet, par 3, and you had players taking 4s on it.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, staying on the fairway is crucial. The wooded holes, no matter what you do, you got to hit fairways. But, the course itself makes you go from long distance throws to essentially what a lot of people would use as a standstill. We saw Joel Freeman standstill forehand a lot of these holes.
Luke Humphreys as well went for that play.
Yeah, and you could play it as difficult as you want. You know, you could go for a big rip chain high and try to ace it, or you could, a lot of the time, hit the ground and finish inside circle one.
Right.
So I don't know, you saw some of the guys really try their hand at something different, and sometimes it just really bit them right in the butt.
Yeah.
You know,
and speaking of something different too, we have, this is the year of all the European players coming back. It's huge to be able to see the women's side has never been higher, some of the top rated players in the world. And then I heard in an interview and saw, I believe it was Silver Lot, his Instagram post was talking about it, never played in wind like this. And I mean, the Finns, the Estonians, all these people have come over are some of the top players in the world. You talk about wooded golf, my goodness.
Yeah. Does
Finland, does Estonia, do these places are known for technical, difficult golf. But then you put them in wind like this, and it was so much confusion. We'll talk about it in the FPO. Evelina starting out hot in the wind, but then just never really finding footing. It's just such an interesting way that our game changes more than really any other sport, I feel like, in the way that it's affected solely by, like, you can play football at the Chicago Bears Stadium and it's going to be snowing and it's like, it's still football.
It's still football.
You can get the most done, but it's like our game is affected so much by wind.
Yeah, aerodynamics.
Straight up.
That is the game. If you can't dynamically throw a disc in the wind, the game gets 10 times harder.
There you go. Well, let's go into a segment that we're going to be calling Run It Back with Ideo Sports. If you have never heard of Ideo Sports, they are the creators of the first ever disc golf shoe. This is a segment we're going to be talking about some history of the tournament, some highlights, but let's talk about the FPO side for this week's Run It Back. The history of FPO, the ratings have never been higher. Talk to me about what happened this week.
So this week, Katrina Allen, also known as Kat, had a 1023 rated round. That is her 25th round over 1020
in her career.
In her career, right? That is only 2 shy of Paige Pierce, who is currently the highest rated female player in the professional game. So Katrina is touching some pretty huge milestones here with the rounds that she's able to pull off. The rating difference, by the way, Paige is at a 980 rating, followed by Kristen Tatar, who is at 977. Then we actually have Evelina Saladnan, who is at 976, and then Katrina at 971. So all 3 of those women are performing at insanely high levels, very close to one another, but you can see how the multitude of high-rated rounds really carries you pretty far. Paige runs so many of these tournaments. It's almost an expectation at this point for her to be performing so well, but now we have so many other people also touching those same levels, and it's amazing to see, because before we see Paige and we think she's an anomaly.
Right.
Not many women, especially with her stature, should be throwing 500-foot drives and putting jump putts from outside circle 2, but we see it.
Yeah.
We see it regularly now, and I think more and more people are learning how to manipulate their bodies, how to use lighter discs and manipulate those discs to then perform well in a variety of different places, not just open fields, but in the woods, just like we saw at Waco.
Right, and I think it cannot be understated. The top women in the world, Paige Pierce is the highest rated woman in the world at 980, and she is shooting, these 10-20 rated rounds. Kat shooting a 10-20 rated round is 50 plus points over her rating. And that goes to say, ratings is kind of a question mark in certain things. Obviously, the conditions come into play, who's there. But the biggest thing with the FPO is who's there. Is it's, again, the highest rated FPO field. I believe at Las Vegas Challenge, they had the highest rated FPO card in history. The top 4 rated women all on one card. I literally get chills thinking about that. The level is being raised. The bar is never been higher. But that is just a crazy stat that we run it back with Ideo Sports to, that 25 10-20 rated rounds, and it's in a new bag.
Yes.
It's incredible.
That is a really good point. She's throwing discs that she had never thrown before this calendar year, really. Or I guess probably at the end of last year.
Yeah.
But And to throw that into the wind as well, how well do you actually know those discs to know, in a headwind, I can expect this?
I'd say pretty dang well.
To be able to perform like she did, I would agree.
Yeah, for sure. Agree. Well, definitely head over to ideosports.com to be able to get your pair of disc golf history. I believe all of those shoes are going to be coming to your door. If they haven't already, going to be hitting your door mid-April. And they're incredible. So thankful for what Craig and Idio Sports is doing for our sport. Built by disc golf, created by disc golf for disc golf. So head over to idiosports.com and be able to pick up your pair of disc golf shoes. All right, let us move into the MPO field. Man, we've talked a lot about the weather. We've talked a lot about, people struggling, people doing, amazing things, people kind of question marking some things. But someone who has done it now, 2 for 2 Disc Golf Pro Tour events, -11 hot round, Chris Dickerson. New bag with Discraft this year, but can shoot hot, but then can also still have some more struggles, down the stretch, whatever. But also up and coming player, Cole Redolin, also shooting -11. I mean, a name that a lot of people haven't heard of, but a name is definitely in. We talked about it over on Parked Podcast, our preseason primer of there's this group of up and coming players, your Cole Redolins, your Gannon Burrs, your Anthony Borellas, these guys that have been in the sport for a long time that are just now getting on tour, that are in that swing, and he's shooting -11. But let's talk about Dickerson's -11 and what it took to even accomplish that.
I mean, like you said, he's throwing this new bag, and I've honestly had a great time watching him throw Discraft discs. I'm pretty familiar with what they have. The fact that is this round 1?
Round 2, he shot -11.
Round 2, -11,
bogey
clean
free
round, 0 bogeys, and some of those holes were almost an auto bogey for a lot of the players out here. If you make the tiniest of mistakes, it could penalize you with not only 1, but 2 extra strokes, depending on where your disc flies to.
Yeah.
It looks like he was circle 1 or parked on, was that almost 9 of the holes?
80% circle 1X putting, 72% fairway hits, and 100% scramble. That is the stat that across any of these rounds that got into that 7 to 10 under, your scramble had to be on another level.
Yeah.
And a player that you cannot think, if you think disc golf, you think scramble, you think the level of play. Paul Macbeth, the beast is back.
He is back. He is coming with a vengeance. He's playing his game. He's not letting a lot of things get in his way.
Yep.
You see him start his round going OB on hole 1 twice and finishing with a par both times, hitting his putt from outside the circle just to stay on par.
Yeah.
And that's how he started it. Right. I mean, he had to really work hard, but you see, I mean, I said it earlier, the front 9 is where you have to score.
Yep.
And he got 6 out of 9 in his 3rd round. He had 5 birdies round 1 and round 2. And then round 3, 7 birdies
in a row. Those are streaks. 5 straight birdies round 1 and 2. And they had a streak of 7 in round 3.
I feel like getting 7 birdies anywhere in any situation.
If you went every other hole, 7 birdies is a great score on most courses on tour, but
that's
7 in a row.
7 in a row at this course with insane conditions. It really just proves how good.
Yeah. And that 7 birdies was in round 3.
When the wind was still outrageous.
Through the woods, holes 4 through 10. I mean,
Paul, if you're listening, you're amazing. I know you probably hear it all the time. Thank you.
Thank you for doing what you do. And something that was kind of surprising to hear from him, and we've heard this from other players that have been in the game for so long, there becomes a point where no matter what you're doing, I mean, so many of us living the disc golf life, being on tour, doing everything that you're dreaming about doing every day, it still becomes a job at some point. It still becomes that reaching point where you're a little bit burnt out. You're feeling it. And Macbeth talked about it. He went down to Jacksonville, Florida in the off season, and in one of his vlogs was saying he was burnt out. Like he was feeling, he didn't throw a disc for a while, but was able to go and get a good reset. He took down Memorial and then now takes down here at Waco. So, I mean, it's hard to talk about Macbeth and not expect him to do it. He's playing, I believe, less events than he really has in the past, solely to say, hey, I'm going to go to the events that matter most, where I can score the points that I need to, where I can, do it and be able to, be there for the fans. But still, he's still got it.
Yeah, I don't think he's going anywhere anytime soon.
No.
I think we can expect to see him performing at a top level pretty consistently.
Yeah.
There's not a lot that can get in his way.
Right. And a player that is performing at a top level consistently, that is like the biggest surprise, the most like genuine shock, but also like biggest hype right now is Luke freaking Humphries. I do believe that is his middle name. He's the player to watch in 2022.
I agree. I'm having a really good time watching Luke Humphrey play disc golf because all I've really ever seen him do is commentate.
Yeah, commentate, right? Host
the skins matches, right, which are a blast, but he's not playing.
Yeah.
And so
he's playing, but it's definitely not on the level of where he's making cards. He was on Jomez for the first time this weekend.
Yeah. And to see his style of play is really fun. Mm-hmm. It looks very controlled. His form is pretty smooth.
Yeah.
Like everything from start to finish. I like what I see out of him. And also a lot of disc manipulation.
Right.
You see him throwing hyzer flips. You see him throwing forehands on a lot of the shots. He can use his whole bag and he can use it very well.
Yeah.
Like we saw in the wind, it's not a huge issue for him. I'm impressed. Luke Humphries putting in some time in the offseason and seeing it pay off immediately.
Yeah, being from Wichita, Kansas, definitely grew up with some wind. And a ball golfer in the past, and man, I got a dog. Birdies are birdies. I want to be able to be on the course, and obviously everyone knows Hogan and being able to be out there and doing that. But some stats about him: he is one of 2 players from Vegas and Waco, only joined by Thomas Gilbert, to stay in the top 10 at our first 2 events. And of course, there were some players that didn't play LVC that did play Waco and vice versa. I mean, Drew Gibson winning LVC didn't play Waco, but it's still, that's a shocking stat to know that there were your Ricky Wysocki's, your Joel Freemans, these guys, your Adam Hammises, these guys that you expected to be at the top consistently. Mm-hmm. Luke Humphries and Thomas Gilbert are the only 2 players that have been in the top 10 at our first 2 events.
Consistency says a lot about how you're playing the game. In my eyes, I think the first 2, maybe 3 tournaments of the year say a lot about what was your off season like. Mm-hmm. How was that for you? And are you ready to come and grind? Because this is the beginning of it all. Right?
Which you see some players now saying there is no off season. I was able to talk with Andrew Presnell in an interview at Vegas, and he was like, I didn't really have an off season. I played the whole time. Deanne and AJ Carey both hosting tournaments, running tournaments, doing all these different things. But you see players like Macbeth. You see players like Humphries. I know he and Kevin Jones went down to Mexico and said, let's stay in disc golf, but I'm not going to practice every single day. Mm-hmm. I know disc golf. I know what I'm doing with my body, but what does it look like to reset? And obviously, it's freaking working.
Yeah.
It's incredible. And this is, like, as we'll get off of Luke Humphries' hype train, never. But for now, he mentioned that Waco is his second least favorite course on tour.
Yeah.
He finished 70th twice in a row in 2018, 2019.
That's brutal.
I believe it was. And then in 2020, he cashed by 1 stroke on the 18th hole, throwing an approach and being able to make the cash line by 1 stroke. So talk about a tournament that he was just like, this again.
Yeah.
And he comes in and gets second.
Mentally, what a great way to just shock what you've known in your prior life. Mm-hmm. He could do anything.
Yeah.
If this was his second worst favorite course or least favorite course, and he comes in and rocks it like this, I hope he carries this momentum.
No doubt. A player that is definitely known in the woods. And I'll say it. I think he's the best lefty in the world.
Sorry, Zach.
At the moment. Yeah, Zach Melton. Nathan Queen.
Yeah.
The consistency Chris Clemens has. Okay, Nathan Queen, I think, is the best lefty in the world. Pro Tour champion. You can't get away from that. Nathan Queen, love you, buddy. This event, and I think when it comes to distance, when it comes to what Chris Clemens is able to do, tied for third here. Round 1, -2. Round 2, -8. Round 3, -7. Found consistency, a player that has been at the top here and there, and he's just a joy to watch. And I think what brings him into that best lefty of the world, so many of these courses we've seen in the past are designed for right-handed players. You need that right to left moving shot. He has one of the best forehands in the game.
That's what I was going to say. You're right. A lot of courses are designed with a righty in mind, or at least make you hit this large right to left fading shot. Without a forehand as a lefty, you have to create a ridiculous disc in order to achieve that. Mm-hmm. So he's able to get out there and really put power behind his forehands and create shots that maybe the righties even struggle with to hit backhand.
It's a different spin.
Yeah, he performed incredibly well this weekend. I think just round 2 and round 3 alone showcase a lot of what we should hope to see in future rounds from Chris. I put him up there, though. You know, as far as the other lefties out there, I know they're few and far between, but you guys are going to have to fight for that belt title.
No doubt. And Chris Clemens jumping off of third card into third place. He jumped 6 spots on the final day. Like that, not even on coverage. Quietly, let me jump into the podium spot. Of course, that happened due to some difficulty on the last couple holes. We'll get into that as we move down this leaderboard, but let's get going here. Joel Freeman tied for third. Incredibly consistent, but just the tiniest bits off. There was he was on the Gatekeeper card a couple of times. Hayden and I were able to watch 2 of his rounds. Going to continue to say this. One of, if not the most best dressed, craziest dressed players on tour. He rocked the strawberry shirt, man. Round cool. 2. The berry power was there, and it was incredible. Forehand, backhand. His game is so rounded. I would compare him at this point, and as he continues on and playing, he hasn't even been on the tour that long.
Right.
Like it's been 2-3 years. Mm-hmm. He's getting, in my mind, to that Chris Dickerson, I have a well-rounded Swiss Army knife game. He's changed up his putt, but again, just a tiny bit off. I mean, the separation from him being in third to jumping up was only 3 strokes, and I can count and think of immediately 3 to 5, 6 putts that were just a little bit off.
Yep.
And he was so close to it.
Yeah, you saw him out there with a game plan in mind, though, and that's what I loved about Joel. I mentioned it earlier. Standstill, forehands. With these shots that are 260, curving any direction that he really needs it, he pulls out his favorite mid-range.
The Gator 3. I mean, that's his signature disc. He carries like 4 of them.
And he absolutely parks a lot of those shots. So, yeah Joel, great job. Definitely impressed with his rounds. The consistency was definitely there, but again, he had a little bit of a hard time just hitting all of the lines he needed. Yeah,
and it was we say that with like the most tiny critique. I mean, tied for third, he shot phenomenal rounds.
He did.
Moving into the most phenomenal round, Chris Dickerson -11. We've already chatted about that, but man, there is this excitement and also fear, I think, when it comes to having a new bag. There is usually this like, we're doing amazing. Okay, let's figure it out. Okay, we're going to do amazing again. You look at last year. I mean, you look at James Conrad, had some struggles, and then, hey, now I'm a world champion. Will we see that from Chris Dickerson? I think there's a chance.
There's a good chance.
But definitely was on the way to fight for this. And, I mean, he strung together, what is this? Seven birdies in round 3 after starting bogey. But then, hole 17, 18, 17 was brutal.
It
round
really
3
tore him up.
Like it was absolutely brutal. He went OB on the drive and then lays up to the spot where he needed to be, and then goes OB on the approach as well with that line, then wall out of bounds. And that left to right wind going around that corner on 17 wrecked everyone.
Yeah, he ended up taking a triple bogey.
Laying up for a triple bogey.
Yeah, and gosh, you have to know, closing your final round with a triple bogey, knowing that so many people are performing at high levels, you have to really eat that one, and it's tough. That's a tough thing to swallow. Yeah,
no doubt. And then finishing on 18 with a double. 18 playing the hardest hole on the course. I believe 17 was the second hardest. So, I mean, we talked about it with this course preview it's, hey, your round's going amazing, but just wait. There's this 17. There's this 18 coming. And something we didn't chat about, let's get into it for a second now. Hole 15. The only change, I believe, on the course, going from a par 4 to a par 3, but nothing changed.
No,
568 feet.
568 par 3, that can only happen in a top tier tournament.
And the conditions of that course the shape of that line has to be perfect. It played I believe it was 1.5 strokes over par.
Gosh, I mean, you have to believe that double OB gets into a lot of people's heads. I honestly saw a lot of forehand players
say, I'm going to go for a par.
With a backhand mid-range.
Really?
Yeah. Just laying it into the middle of the fairway, enough for them to get their second shot into circle 1 so they can just get a nice, clean par. But
we saw Macbeth do that, our champion. I mean, every round he walked up, and I don't even think he threw a full speed disc and said, I'm going to throw, maybe that 10 speed on a forehand, and play for par every time. We saw a couple of eagles happen, but even when it was a par 4, like I said, well, now it's a birdie, but there was, less than 10, less than 12. It's an odd change, but I think it was the most difficult hole for the way those conditions were playing.
Absolutely.
If that hole's a tailwind, totally different.
Definitely a different hole, but you get pushed around, you're OB.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about, as we move down the leaderboard here, Isaac Robinson. Homegrown kid here from Georgia, where we both are. Awesome to see him on the card. He's been playing disc golf for really his whole life, getting into it. I was playing soccer. Playing other sports growing up. He's one of the players that is that Gannon Burr, is that Cole Redlin, that has played disc golf since they were a little kid. So amazing to see him up on the leaderboard. And as we continue and wrap up here, MPO, Kale Leviska, his worst finish in Waco. What was he thinking? What was he doing? His worst finish ever, tied for 5th. He's gotten 2nd and 3rd in past years. Big expectations, but Dr. Smooth, as some call him, being able to have his own lineup of discs coming was just a joy to be able to see Kale.
I love seeing Kale on coverage. I think he represents the sport really well, on top of how well he plays the game. And to see him add some new discs to the bag, really fun.
New discs to everyone's bag, hopefully.
Yeah, a lot of people's. Mm-hmm. Some of the same mistakes we saw other people make. Got off the fairway a couple times, had to scramble, and that beast is not gonna play light. No,
definitely not. And as we wrap up here, the battle in Vegas. Cannot think of Vegas and not think of Gannon Burr, 16 years old. He posted on Instagram saying, man, I was really just thinking about it pre-round and was just wanting to be humbled. And my goodness, he was humbled.
He indeed was.
Yeah, which is a good thing, though. We talked about it last night before we were prepping for this. I think it shows the stature of your play. It shows what you have, where you're at mentally, and it is, Drew Gibson looked at him after Vegas and said, this is the future of disc golf. Yeah. This is what it looks like to do, the way he carries himself, the support system he has. For him to post on socials and say, I was hoping to be humbled, and he was, and how do I build from this? What a trajectory. That is, I know you've spent a lot, you have a teaching background. I've spent a lot of time in students and working with this next generation of, of humans. Mm-hmm. And that's not something that's there very often.
No. Being able to learn from lessons like that as well.
And want to do that. Not, it happened, now I have to learn from it. But going into it and saying, I have to be humbled.
Knowing that your win was a fantastic win, but it's not something you can come out and expect. Sorry. Thank you for correcting that.
Which was, it happened in the press conference too. And he was like, well, actually I was runner-up. It was tough. So.
But to perform so well, you have to expect that you're going to have the opposite outcome occasionally. And this is a course that it'll do that for everyone here.
No doubt.
But love to see such a professional mind come out of such a young man.
For sure. Again, let's wrap up MPO here. Paul Macbeth winning it, Luke Humphreys in 2nd, tied for 3rd, Chris Clemens, Joel Freeman. So, great podium, some unexpected names on there. I think 3 out of those are unexpected names to be able to jump up. So again, the excitement of this season, any player can do it. But if Paul Macbeth's there, he probably is. So nothing new. Let's move into FPO. We've talked about it a lot so far. Before we talk about who won this thing, let's talk about Evelina Saladnan. She started out hot going into round 2 with a 4-stroke lead. And then it just kind of filtered off. The putt was off. She was +7 through 9 holes in round 3, dropping her 8 spots, was missing 5-foot tap-ins, hitting band. It was just something was not there for Evelina this week.
I don't know if it's the pressure after round 1 being the leader. I know that there was a statistic that the guys at DGN mentioned that the leader after round 1 for the FPO field was statistically most likely to finish as the winner of the whole tournament.
Really?
I don't know if she heard that statistic and put the pressure on herself, but after seeing her round 1, I had confidence. I imagine she did too.
And she's played great at this tournament in the past.
She absolutely has. But to see those, like you said, 5-foot putts, hitting band or hitting basket, that just hurts.
Yeah.
It definitely happens to the best of us, but to start off with your best round and then get a little bit worse and then get even worse after that, having a really rough 3rd round, that's a little painful, but hopefully she's ready to bounce back.
Yeah, she's a champion in Finland, and winning, I believe it was 4 out of the 5 Prodigy Disc Pro Tour stops. Knows how to win, and it's those players, I mean, Hannah Blumeros as well coming over, players that are here in the States for the first time in a while. It's getting used to these courses. It's making that happen. Kristen Tatar, second place. We'll get to her in a moment. But, man, I was so hyped to see this happen. Valerie Mondajano won this tournament after going +1 round 2. Let me make a little bit of corrections in round 2, going -3. And then round 3, -7. One off the hot round all weekend. She gained 10 strokes on the front 9 in the final round due to Evelina being a little bit off. But it's a brand new bag. And she's coming out and winning.
Yeah, I think that comeback that she made was this season, one of the most fun things to watch. Yeah. Outside of the playoff that happened between Gannon and Drew Gibson, I think that was a blast to watch her just skyrocket, coming in from holes 5 through 10, carding 5 birdies.
Yep.
Missing only 1, and not by much, albeit. Finishing the round as well, that first round, having a birdie on hole 17.
Yeah, the only birdie in the round. Maybe even, I would say they're probably less than 5 in the tournament in FPO field. But her form and what she was able to do, I was watching some of the coverage over on GK Pro, Madison Walker and Erica Stinchcomb, 2 hot geese as they call them. Amazing, super fun commentary to listen to. They were talking about it and they were shocked. Those are 2 players that have been in the game for a while now. They were like, her form is impeccable. Her timing, it was amazing. And you look at who she spends most of her time with is Mason Ford, her fiance. And congratulations to them, by the way. But, dude, Mason Ford is one of the cleanest players, one of the most impeccable. Him and Bradley Williams and Kayla Aviska, I would say, are 3 of the most just form is on point. You're using every part of your body to make something happen in this exact way. And Valerie Mandojano her game was just so clean.
She's very balanced. Everything that she's doing, forehand, backhand, putting, approaching, she's balanced. She is attacking, but she knows also how to play the game, right? In the wind, you can't try to land it under the basket. No. You have to skip it up, let it ride in the dirt, and you saw her do that. That final round, she really proved how smart of a golfer she is. Yeah. And she pulls up to the top and is able to seal the deal. Yeah,
I was able to chat with her at the Throw Pink Women's Disc Golf Championships last year in Rock Hill, and that was something I asked her about. I was like, man, where does this consistency come from? She has an amazing support system with family, with Mason, with her sister also touring as a sponsored player here in the disc golf world. But the hype behind her switching over to dynamic discs, the hype behind dynamic discs has never been higher. But, man, just such an amazing way to see it, like you said, starting from the bottom, not the bottom, but your worst round 1, and then saying, I'm playing this course 3 times, let me learn, and win this thing.
Yeah, what an impressive third round for Valerie.
Yep, and moving into our second place finisher, we're kind of expecting to say this name. I don't know, there's 20 events, including majors, 21 events?
22.
Okay, good maths. Kristen Tatar is a name we're going to see on the podium. I'm going to say it, hot take, every single time. I don't think there's a way in which she's not fighting for the win. This week, coming up a little bit short, but, man, again, +2 first round, able to correct -3, -4. There's no surprises here. Talk about ways maybe she's able to close it out.
Honestly, for Kristen, I think it's going to boil down to her putting. I think if she can become a little more confident at the edge of the circle, maybe right outside of circle 1, sometimes I see her straddle putt fall short at that distance. And I would like for her to connect with the chains a little bit more often.
Maybe switch it up and say, hey, when I'm outside a certain distance, I change out my putting stance.
Possibly. And, she can't step inside the circle, but I don't know what type of jump putt or step putt she uses outside the circle.
Yeah, we really don't see it now that you mention that.
Yeah, so I'm curious to see what she takes, but her consistency will keep her, like you said, in the top. Yeah, at least for the unforeseeable future.
Right, and the foreseeable, both. She's going to be at the top. That's what we're trying to say. Another player, brand new bag, Katrina Allen. We chatted about her already. 3rd place, jumping. How many spots was it on the last day? Let's see. She jumped
14.
Sorry, my font's really tiny on that monitor. 14 spots.
14 slots.
With a double bogey. Shot -8.
I think Kat came into that last round knowing I played way better than this. This does not showcase what I'm capable of.
Yep.
Because she went +2 round 1, +4 round 2, and then fixed something and said,
Fixed everything.
let's get it going, -8.
Yeah. And her worst round was on the best conditions.
Yeah, that's what shocked me. You saw most of the players perform better after round 1. In round 2, she did not. She made some of the same mistakes, but like I said, put it all behind her and just smoked the rest of the competition with that -8.
Yeah, amazing. And I mean, coming off of Vegas, the excitement is definitely there. The momentum is there. She is one of the hardest working players on tour. Talk about our tied for 4th here. Kat Mersch. What an incredible just swing of where she's headed, what she's doing this year. She's putting together birdies. She's gaining distance. I was able to chat with her working with Upper Park this past week, in Vegas, and she has put in so much effort. She said she's been in the cow fields of Arkansas she was like, I'm out there hanging out with the cows, just throwing Frisbees, putting in the work in the off season. And man, she's strung together 5 birdies in a row on the final round to jump up 4 spots and put herself in contention for the first time, I feel like, in her career.
Yeah, honestly, it's lovely to just see the consistency come out of Kat. I mean, like I said earlier, you had to score at the beginning of this tournament, and there she was, holes 4 through 8, birdie 5 times in a row. That set her up. You know, she finished the last 10 holes even, but it was the beginning of the round that really kind of solidified everything for her. A couple of technical things that if she cleaned up, you see her taking 3rd place outright. And honestly, she's not far from 2nd, 1st place. Really performing at a level that we see out of people like Katrina and Paige and Kristen.
Also tied for 4th, Owen Scoggins.
I love Owen Scoggins.
She's incredible.
She's so magnificent.
Dude, the absolute joy she has for disc golf. We were to hang out with her at United States Championships last year at a putting league at a brewery, and she was crushing everyone. Man, she, in a press conference, Chris with Gatekeeper here was able to ask her, you're known as one of the best putters, men's and women's. She's just such a laser beam putter. What have you been working on in the off season? And her response was, I've really been trying to work on backhand rollers, which obviously didn't come into play too much. But she said, I've been working on forehand mid-range, and mid-range being the disc, but also forehand at a mid-range distance. And a course that she needed to do that on was here. And she did it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That brought a brand new level to her game. Being able to throw that shot shape makes the course completely wide open to a right-handed player.
Right.
But again, Owen, congratulations. She put together some good rounds this weekend, and it's good to see her up in the top 5.
Of course. And Finn, that we are excited. There's a lot of hype behind, still finding some footing, but was able to jump up and shoot some good rounds towards the end, was Hannah Blumeros. She is truly getting confidence more and more and more. Putting, usually the biggest part of her game that needs work. Making some changes, being able to do it. Another player, be able to string holes together in the woods, and it's exciting to know that there is it's exciting and also humbling, I think, for some of these players that are the top rated players in the world. You look at your Linus Carlsons, your Niklas Antila, when he's showing up here, guys on both men's and women's sides that are coming over to the Disc Golf Pro Tour that are going to need some time to adjust, and when they're used to winning everything. So Hannah Blumeros, awesome to be able to see her start to find that footing, start to get going. I see her taking down at least one Pro Tour event this year.
I agree.
But as we wrap up FPO, a name that is first time on full tour, sponsored by Dynamic Discs. I was able to talk with Eric McCabe a lot walking around at Vegas, and he was telling me, get ready for this player getting here in Waco, Macie Vela Diaz. Man, her first ever full tour out of East Tennessee, I believe. Such a well-rounded game. In my eyes, one of the most comparable styles of play, control, distance, backhand, forehand approach to Evelina. And that's an amazing feat. But watching her play at United States Championships and the level in which she's coming in and the excitement of being a first full tour, I really think the sky's the limit for Macie Vela Diaz. So it's going to be awesome. I'm looking forward to that. But man, overall, to wrap it up here, I think we were talking about this before. great execution in Waco, but also not great execution due to the wind, due to the cold, due to weird things. I mean, hole 2, we saw on the same card a player throw a shot completely into the river, and then the guy walk up right after him and throw completely in the river.
Pretty much the exact same shot.
Literally. And it's like, not even that, hey, I didn't make that correction, but how do I make that correction? You know? Like, it is just an absolute shock that is possible at the top of the level. We had sub 300 foot holes, players struggling. It's the beast for a reason.
Yeah. You know, I think guys are still shaking off a lot of the rust.
Yeah.
Maybe it was a good opportunity to remember to take your wind read if someone is teeing off in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I think as we move into another Texas course, we're going to have some wind. They're going to have to really work on it.
And this is one we're going to move in our next Disc Golf Pro Tour event. There is a Silver Series, the Open at Belton, in this in-between week. But Disc Golf Pro Tour, we're moving into the Texas States Championships in Tyler, Texas. When you think wind, if Waco is bad, brother. Ricky, known for playing incredible at this event. He's won it in previous years. But this course is very different from the Beast, mainly because there's no river, but also it is still Texas golf. It's some tight wooded lines. The ground is hard packed. It's a totally different feel as we continue on, and we're in these different locations as we move to the East Coast, as we move to the West Coast. What are some expectations? Maybe some players. Give me 3 players on the MPO, 3 players on the FPO that are going to maybe make some moves in Texas States.
If I had to put money on anybody, I'm putting money on Ricky.
Yep.
Ricky destroys Texas golf.
Yep.
I think he speaks for himself. I would also like to see, I mean, I'm going to put Paul in there. The control in his game just feeds well into Woods golf. Third MPO player that I would think is performing well. Honestly, I'm going to go ahead and say Kale. I'm going to say Kale LaVisca,
okay.
And I'm going to see, I'll watch for him and see how he performs. But I have a feeling that Waco gave him a good feel of what he's going to have to handle long par 3s, long par 4s in the woods. So those are going to be my 3 on the MPO side.
I'm going to add one to that, and I think someone who played great at Vegas, someone who wrapped up the season well and is good at playing in the woods too. I'm going to throw Adam Hammis in there. I think his forehand and the way in which he's a little bit off this week in Waco, but is such a good controlled player as well, and someone who is in that next tier. He's still top 10 in the world, but Adam Hammis, I think we're going to see him do really well at Texas States. Let's talk about FPO heading in there.
Let's see, FPO. I'll put Kristen up at the top of my list. The courses that she's familiar with are wooded courses.
Right.
Barring any sort of crazy wind or weather, I would put my money on her to take the FPO.
Yep. Speaking of Texas too, I think you got to add Valerie into that.
I was going to say,
being from San Antonio, these courses, this Texas swing is only a couple of hours away.
Yeah.
So I did take the momentum that she took in this, winning this tournament. 3-4 strokes she was over Kristen.
Yeah.
You got to think she's up there. Give me one more.
Absolutely. She was going to be my number 2, and then I got to give Paige her due diligence.
Yep.
She performs incredibly well, and
Texas native as well.
And the consistency that you see out of her is just unmatched.
Awesome. Well, that's going to wrap it up here for Waco. We're headed to Texas States. Like we said, you heard our picks. Let us know your picks in the comments below. This has been Gatekeeper Media's In the Mix with Parked Podcast. My name is Mitch Phillips.
I'm Zach Harrison.
Not Hayden Ricard. We'll see him soon. Thank you, Zach, for joining us. Really thankful for you to be here. This has been a blast, and we will see you in Texas for the Texas States Championships real soon.